Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 10th, 2018 Town Council meeting for the town of Wakefield. I'm going to go right into public participation. I have Bob Mitchell. Please step forward. You have 3 minutes, Bob. You're very familiar with the rules. Please adhere to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. I believe there may be 3 proposals tonight from the Charter Review Committee that I would like to speak to. In these 3 proposals, the committee managed to attack 2 most important issues between an individual and town government: property taxes and voting rights. The committee's proposals take authority away from the individual and give it to Town Hall. The committee proposed changing the Board of Assessors to be appointed by Town Hall rather than be elected. This increases Town Hall's authority, as they would choose the staff that influences assessment of properties. By taking the voters out of the process, citizens may no longer select or throw out assessors who affect taxation. If you don't believe my position, then just watch the June 11th Town Council meeting, where Vice Chairperson Ally Houghton said that the Board of Assessors, quote, requested the change, and, quote, one of the cons, though, would be more authority to the executive offices. The next 2 diminish the voters' opportunity to re-vote at a town-wide ballot an article that was approved at town meeting. Currently, the referendum petition must be completed in 10 business days with 200 signatures. In May, the committee recommended changing the business days to calendar days. The July report on the town's website by Chairperson John Carney presented other towns' petition requirements as a comparison. After much research, I want to share that a critical piece of information failed to be included. Cherry-picked were only towns that have representative, not open town meetings. This is a failed comparison of petition requirements. I've heard some say that 200 town meeting voters are better educated than 2,000 town-wide voters. I could not disagree more. And as an example, at the same June 11th Town Council meeting, Committee Chairman John Carney said, quote, the bylaw committee has done, and what a great job they've done, but quite frankly, they went to town meeting with what I believe was Article 21. And I still don't believe I understand what it says, but I voted for it. Here are the last 3 instances of referendum petitions. In 1999, voters rejected the petition, which led to the purchase of the land at the head of Lake Quannapowa, affectionately known as the Gertrude Spalding Park. In 2014, the voters affirmed the petition to reverse selling the downtown parking lot to the assisted living facility for a shared garage. In 2018, voters affirmed the petition to reverse spending $8 million for building renovation. In conclusion, apparent to all Wakefield voters is that these changes reduce our voting rights. This short-sighted reaction to that vote and the wishes of 3 assessors are contrary to the needs of the voters. Regardless of your view of what's in front of us, do understand that your voting rights will be diminished by the same amount Town Hall's increases. In summary, I urge that these 3 proposals do not make it to fall town meeting, or perhaps we have the committee do the presentation in the spring with more public input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
You must have timed it.
Yeah, timed perfectly. So for the viewers at home, Peter May had a family matter tonight, so that is why I've taken over the chair responsibilities. In such, I am going to move item 6F to the front. I'm going to have John Smolsky from the Wakefield Linfield Chamber of Commerce. I know you're busy tonight, John. I want to get you in and out of here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fellow councilors, as the chairman represented, I am John Smolensky. I'm the executive director of the Wakefield Linfield Chamber of Commerce, and I am here this evening to ask for your permission to have a sidewalk sale in the downtown area. The specifics of the sale I will highlight for you at this time, and I would like you to know that this sidewalk sale is not representative of just chamber members, but of all merchants within the areas that I've specified in my letter to the town administrator, Mr. Mayo. Those areas are the Main Street area in downtown, the Main Street area in Greenwood, and Albion Street. I've worked and I've been in conversation with these vendors, have come up with the following parameters, which I'll have agreed to if this sidewalk sale is permitted. I will note that while I was not here, apparently the sidewalk sale had been an annual event in the past and had taken place on numerous occasions, but I'm unable to speak to that as I wasn't here at that time. The specifics and the parameters that this group is working with the Chamber, as I said, is open to all merchants in those areas for the benefit economically of the town and to bring more consumers and residents into those specific areas. So we're looking at Saturday, September 22nd, with a rain date of Saturday, September 29th. The event timeline would be 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We all are in agreement, sidewalks will not be blocked, access to and from the streets will not be blocked, crosswalks will not be blocked, and all sidewalks be open to normal pedestrian traffic and remain handicap accessible as they are now. The event designated areas, as I mentioned, are Main Street downtown, Albion Street, and Main Street Greenwood. We would plan to advertise the sidewalk on a special events page located on the Chamber website, local newspapers, and if possible on the town website and Facebook page as well. And that is our request. The areas that I've specified are the areas that have asked and consulted with. So we're not trying to be exclusionary, but as I'm opening it to members and non-members, if I was coming to the council, as I said to the group, I'd like to have as much specific information as possible so you understand the scope of what it is we're asking to do. And that would be the request we put for you this evening.
Yep. So the motion on the floor is to request a sidewalk sale on Main Street downtown on Albion Street and for Main Street Greenwood from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, the 22nd, with a rain date of Saturday, the 29th, 2018.
So moved.
Second for discussion.
For discussion.
Dan?
My hand was up first. It was.
She's closer, I can see her quicker.
So I absolutely remember the sidewalk sales when I was young, and it was a huge deal in Wakefield. We didn't have the festivals, but it's a different feeling with the festivals. The streets are open. As a kid, you would save your money, and you would go to the sidewalk sales specifically to look at what was out there, to purchase, to go grab an ice cream. I have wonderful memories as a young person and a teenager of the sidewalk sales. I think it's fabulous to bring it back.
Well, I know it was only a few years ago, but I hope you still have those
Exactly.
pennies to
It was
come
just 3
spend
years ago
at
or
this
17.
year's event.
Exactly. But
Thank
no,
you.
it was, I have fond memories, and it's, I think it's a great thing for the merchants.
Great, thank you very much.
Paul?
It's a great thing. It's been going on now for several years. I would just wish that this board would consider making it town-wide, because it has been in the past. It's not just been selective streets in the past, because North Ave would be excluded from putting anything out at this point. So I would say, let's extend it to wherever there's a brick and mortar establishment, they're allowed to be part of the sidewalk sale. I mean, if they're selling stuff out of the house, you don't want them carting things outside, but, so wherever there's a brick and mortar establishment, so that could be Greenwood, it could be Four Corners, it could be North Ave, add the rest of the components to it. At least that would be my recommendation going forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If that's obviously the wish of the council, that's fine. I would just ask then that you adopt these specific parameters, because there may be people outside of the reach of what I'm accustomed, of what I've spoken with, that if they take this on, they would understand the responsibilities or the parameters of which the sidewalk sale is taking place. I wouldn't want someone not to adhere to the 10 to 3 and start creating their own parameters. So if you do decide to follow Mr. DINOCCO's suggestion, I would just ask that you formally adopt these parameters so we're all playing by the same rules.
Absolutely.
Yep, Ed?
I think on Paul's point, I was thinking specifically North Ave. I know that we had at least 2 new businesses, Remedy Exchange and the Mary Lion, and that seems to be an area that is developing. There's also the cabinet place that'll be, or kitchen place, the showroom that'll be opening soon. So I think the idea of driving traffic to as many points as possible, including Four Corners, does make sense. If it aligns with what you're saying, again, I see no reason why we shouldn't make it townwide with the same parameters as you've established, and promoting as such.
Myself, I just walk before I run, and so I was trying to use it in this
Absolutely.
manner. But
Absolutely.
I certainly wouldn't speak against other businesses having the opportunity to participate. That's not our purpose.
Mary, was that you back there?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Down here. John, I'm just, and there's no, is there, I'm excited about this too. I remember it too. Growing up, we used to come by Wakefield. Is there a charge for businesses?
There is no cost to
Great,
the
so-
town, to the residents, anybody. We're trying to encourage businesses and residents to come downtown and to do exactly what you see, come down and see all the great things downtown Wakefield and other parts of this town have to offer.
I appreciate that. And just for me to know, how many businesses in Wakefield belong to the chamber right now?
This is about 220 right now.
Okay, that's great. And so if a business who isn't part of the chamber but is a business, and they'll get the sidewalk space right in front of their store,
Yes.
right? That's the
Yes.
expectation?
Correct.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That's
And
all
my
Mr.
only
Chairman.
saying is that we make sure that we have handicapped accessible and everything is ADA and we don't block handicapped ramps going into the street. So that's my only concern, but good luck, John.
I believe that we're all agreed that we're self-policing involved because we want this to
Excellent.
continue to be a success.
Okay, good. Julie?
And I would just ask as part of the promotion, whether the town's doing it or chamber is doing it, that we might remind people that the plastic bag reduction is now in effect for all small businesses in town. And it's gone wonderfully, there are absolutely no complaints, but this is a great opportunity to communicate with all the
Reinforce that.
businesses, exactly.
Sure.
All right, so the motion on the floor, it has been seconded.
You may want to amend that to
right.
townwide, you haven't done
Okay.
that yet, so if you want to.
So I move that we accept the motion to have a sidewalk sale September 22nd, not 10 to 3, as explained, rain date of September 29th, to all Wakefield businesses, brick and mortar businesses, and adhere to the rules set forth by the chamber. How's that?
Sounds great.
Second.
So the motion on the floor has been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, John.
Mr.
Thank you
Chairman,
very
thank you for your
much.
courtesy. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Bring those pens.
All right, we'll
No,
go
it
back.
was a big deal, I loved it. Yeah, I know.
To question, or item number 2, personnel and appointments for poll workers. The request from Sherry Dalton to advertise for poll workers for 1-year appointments from January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. Advertisement will be published in the Wakefield Daily Item and on the town's website with a description of what is entailed.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have any discussion? Maureen?
Just, can we clarify going on when we say town website, that includes social media? People are not going to our website, and there are people, a large population, that don't go to the website on their own and don't read the item. So can we do like town communication? Can we kind of
Would we-
website and social media or something like that?
Is it going on to social media though?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't.
We can make sure it does.
Okay.
Yep.
To our
Do we need to
Facebook
amend that?
To our
Stella?
page.
Yeah.
Just
Facebook.
Facebook, yeah,
Right.
we
Yep.
just, certain items are, I think we need to be standardized about everything.
Yeah.
Also
Yep.
going on social media.
Yep.
Do we need to amend that, Steve, at all? No? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Question 2B, the Human Rights Committee. Request from Sherry Dalton, Town Administrator's Office, to advertise for an opening on the Human Rights Committee. Advertisement will be published in the Wakefield Daily Item and on the town's website / social media with a description of what is entailed.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can we just be clear on
Ed?
social media? So we're talking about the town's official Facebook page, or what are we talking about?
That-
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's-
What we
That's-
have, yeah.
Yes.
Other people, we hope will share it and
Not the
whatever.
insane Facebook page.
No, the-
No,
this is
the town, the one that we control, yeah.
Right, no, I understand that, but I'm like, we're not pushing out through Twitter, or, I mean, what are
No,
we talking about?
no.
Instagram? I mean, we're talking
No.
the town's Facebook
Not-
page.
not
Because
Not
we're-
only the website, but Facebook.
Because we're saying
Right.
social media, I think we should just be
Right.
specific and just identify what we're referring to. So let's say
The
Facebook.
town's Facebook page,
Yeah.
okay. So move has been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Two. Disability Commission, request from Sherry Dalton, Town Administrator's Office, to advertise for 2 openings on the Disability Commission. Advertisement will be published in the Wakefield Daily Item and town's website /Facebook page with a description of what is entailed.
So moved.
Second discussion?
Yep.
Was there, people resigned on this? to create
There was
two openings?
already an opening, and Mr. Powers is going to resign.
Okay.
Very good, so, our thanks to Mr. Powers.
Mhm. Thanks, Greg, for your service.
Am I correct, Sherry? I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
today's his last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. So liaison updates for next meeting, September 27, 2018, Town Council agenda. Possible town councilors discussion regarding their liaisons. So if you plan on speaking next meeting, please reach out to Sherry and just have her put on the agenda. That doesn't need a vote, Steve.
Nope.
Approval of minutes. The regular board minutes. Possible vote to approve the August 6, 2018 minutes.
So moved.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. I have 2 on executive minutes now. Possible vote to approve the July 16, 2018 executive minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Possible vote to approve the August 6, 2018 executive minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Acceptance and expenditure. Library gift, possible vote to accept and expend a gift to the library in the amount of $1,636.03.
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, opposed? Oh, it's no discussion. No big discussion on that one. The Wakefield World War II Memorial Fund, possible vote to accept and expend a gift to the Wakefield World War II Memorial Fund in the amount of $50.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The AmeriCal Civic Center gift, and this was money left over, Steve, from the committee that was running at
Yes,
the time?
the Civic Center Committee, I guess they were called, they disbanded their corporation. Whenever you do that, you kind of have a rundown time to make sure no more bills came in. They had given a gift to this, to the town council before for the use of the Civic Center, and they have $504.81 left in their account that they have written a check to the town of Wakefield for the Civic Center use, and we do thank them for, particularly Brian Regan for his really
Service,
great
yeah.
service on that committee.
So possible vote to accept and expend a gift to the AmeriCal Civic Center in the amount of $504.81.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing on tax classification. Possible vote to schedule a public hearing for October 15, 2018 for the fiscal year 2019 tax classification.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda is the Charter Committee presentation. So if I could have Mr. Carney and his delegation brought in.
I'll go get him.
Thanks, Paul.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
John, Ally, thank you for coming tonight.
I was going to say Mr. Chairperson, but you don't see her sitting there.
Peter has a family matter to attend to tonight, so I'm assuming the role.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be here again tonight. There's been a little bit of communications beforehand, a little bit of briefing, but from here on in, everything that we do will be posted on the website. There has been some concerns that were a little bit lapsed. Quite frankly, I'll take responsibility for that. I did not want to put anything on the website until this council was briefed. I thought that was important, that we're ready to present articles to you. We felt that we went through a process where I'm not sure all of us, but some of us, including myself, were kind of surprised at the outcome of what we voted for and voted against. But it was a clean process. It was very educational. I think people were very, very sincere. I had one area where I thought I was going to unanimous vote, and I was the only one to vote for it. And I had another area where I thought I was going to lose, and it was a unanimous vote. So it was a real good, communication session. We looked at this as a research project. There has been some concern relative to not entertaining ideas from the public. Quite frankly, we get some valuable ideas from the public when we posted it on the website. The people who were interested gave us some great ideas. Some of them we agreed with, some we didn't. I'm going to give you an example where we were overwhelmingly convinced in regards to the secret ballot. There were a lot of good people in town who had sincere reasons why they didn't think it was a good thing, and we did not want to give any slant to the direction this committee was recommending that would in any way kind of be a lightning rod of some issue. And the bottom line was, it has not happened that often. It hasn't interrupted that many town meetings. And maybe we'll tolerate that again. Some other issues that is very, very clear is, and no reflection on on Tom Mullen, Town Council, is the fact that this is a very poorly written document. And we could have rewritten every section. And the reason we didn't is because the ballot in the spring would have to be 30 pages long, trying to convince, and I kind of compare it to, I believe it was Article 19 of the town meeting in last town meeting, where the bylaw committee came through with something. I have to be totally honest with you. I voted for it, but I'm sure I didn't understand all of it. And it's one thing to be able to get your town council, all of the town leadership in the front, and everybody will agree that this is a good thing that we're doing at a town meeting, but try to explain that when it's going on a ballot. And that's what we try to avoid. I would suggest that after this committee adjourns, and this probably is one of our last meetings, our final meeting will be at the town meeting in the fall, that maybe every year the council takes on a section and rewrites it, and basically said, look, we're not rewriting this to change anything. We're rewriting it to make it more sense. And one of the things that was brought up to our attention was, if you looked at how the Board of Public Works is defined, it is not complete, but it is more heavily written about in that charter than any other department. And those are the kinds of things that are either determined by budget or determined by bylaw. But you can imagine us going forward and coming up with some ridiculous idea that we're getting rid of the cemetery department, and the kind of commotion we'd be causing by doing that. And our intent would be not that. It's in fact, why are they defined so tightly in the town charter where other departments aren't even explained at all? And having said that, we're going to start our presentation. Ally Houghton, who's the vice chairman, is going to present the articles.
So the first article we looked at and approved to change is moving town meeting to the second Monday in May and moving the town election to the second Tuesday in April. While this will give candidates a little less time to prepare for the election in April, it will give those candidates that do make it into office a little more time to prepare for the town meeting in May. They can get a little more up to speed, see what the issues are going on.
And also on that, one of the issues here was to give as much time for the boards to get state revenues and our estimates on the cherry sheet, and to kind of move it up as close as we can so that what we're dealing with are real numbers at that point in time.
The second article we looked at changing was the 10 business days. We're going to change that to 12 calendar days for effective day of final vote and for a referendum petition. This will give people a little bit different time frame if they are going to challenge a vote at town meeting.
And the reason from 10 to 12 was we were looking at what would happen if a final vote was taken on a Monday or a Thursday. And we were counting out the days, and often it could end up on a Saturday or a Sunday. And so now all of a sudden, you're really cutting the time down short. So if we're going to get a referendum, the next one that we're talking about is upgrading the referendum petition to 5% from right about now 1%. We didn't want to cut people short, not give them enough time. So, and the fact that we're now going to use calendar days, we're much clearly the day you do it, you get 12 days, and you know that's going to be the date you're going to do it. It's going to give people sufficient time to get signatures if required.
And like John said, we are looking to change the amount of signatures up to 5% from 1%. And we've made this change after a lot of public input and looking at other towns and seeing what they do. We also look at changing to having the assessors appointed versus elected. We feel this will give the assessors, well, first the assessors had mentioned that they would prefer it this way because it puts more knowledgeable assessors in that department. We're finding that, it's a harder position to fill when it's a elected position, and the assessors really needs to be people that have that background.
It's common, I believe the council realizes, it's common in other towns around us. And I want to remind people, not that it reflects on the individual holding the position, but we did fill one of the current assessors' seats based on a write-in ballot, that nobody had petitioned to get the job, in the last minute someone put a write-in ballot. And so that's not the way you want to have that office manned.
Another item that we're looking to change is we're approved to change the term for the town moderator from 1 year to 3 years. This was at the request of the town moderator. We also are looking at changing the responsibility of the Finance Committee Selection Committee from the past chairman of the Finance Committee to the current chairperson, and we approved establishing a time limit for replacing Finance Committee members.
That's always been kind of where they ever came up with the past chairman in that particular situation, I'm not sure. But there's been situations where the past chairman leaves, then moves out of town, and now all of a sudden, who's responsible? So the current chairman is probably the most likely person to be around at that point in time.
We also looked at recognizing email as a form of notification. And we also voted to change to reflect how the Board of Health currently operates. And that was after a discussion with the current Board of Health. And we're looking to change the school committee budget submission due from 90 days to 60 days. We feel this will give them more time to work on the budget, but also submit it in enough time for it to be approved. The committee is also looking to change the state law relative to the housing authority, and that was also after speaking with them. And the committee voted to change to reflect the library not having any clerical staff. And the committee also voted to change to reflect that the recreation department does not report to the public works. And then finally, we approved to change some grammatical changes in the charter.
And by unanimous vote, we voted not to move the town elections to coincide with the state and federal elections. Eliminating the ballot, we voted to make it status quo. In the process, from the public participation process, and quite frankly, I believe it happened here at the first time we met with the town council, the suggestion that we look at the percentage of voters required on a petition was brought up. And I think we got more input on that than any issue that we dealt with. And one of the folks that came up, quite frankly, I had thought about it myself, is why do we go to town meeting and have a 2/3 vote on a article, but only require a majority vote in a town election? The committee did not agree with me, and, so we maintained the status quo. And the Advisory Board of Public Works, the chairman, current chairman of the Advisory Board of Public Works right now, had wrote a very, very well-written letter relative to what they are doing now. And as long as this board, council, excuse me, agrees, and that it's going to work out with in a better manner than it did in the past, and we have no problem with that. So we voted not to change that. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Before we get started, Joe and Ally, thank you for your time. Could you tell us who's with you here tonight? Who's with you here today in your committee?
From our committee,
I want to make sure they get recognition for the hard work.
Hi, Andy Bray.
Andy Bray. Susan?
Susan Wetmore. Stacy Constas.
John Bertono.
Thank you all.
I apologize.
Some others.
Eric? I'm sorry, Eric, you're right there.
All right. Questions from this council, I was going to say board.
Mr. Chairman, can I just point out first, back in 1998, when the charter was adopted, the Charter Commission had its own separate council. So I did not draft any of the charter. In fact, it says on my business card I didn't draft any. I have a bumper sticker that says that, and it's going to be on my headstone.
I agree, I understand.
Thank you, Consigliere. Paul?
First of all, I want to thank you and your group for putting together a lot of time and effort on this. You've touched on a lot of items, and as you said, the charter's immense. You could actually go after every page and try to make some sort of substantive change to it, but what you did and what you're presenting, again, this is your opinion through your group of what you would like to present to town meeting floor. Okay, this is just same thing as, well, not the same thing, but a lot of work went into this. The debate will happen on the floor of town meeting. If there's any place for it, that will be the place that this will be.
One of the debates that we welcome and why we want town meeting to make the decision, because you probably will hear in some cases that it should be handled by a bylaw versus the charter. The charter is more permanent. I think that's a debate we should have. I think it's an important discussion. You know, we're trying to do what we can to make the charter reflect how we operate and make it easier. But if the public and town meeting feels otherwise, then that's the course we want to take.
So in one of your comments, though, you reflected that you thought that maybe that we should think about going into it on a yearly basis. Did you ever think of the one section of reducing the 10-year down to, say, 5-year?
No.
Keeping it 10-year?
No, I think the charter is our constitution. You don't want to mess with it that often.
Mm-hmm.
We've cut down a lot of our recommendations here that we were talking about, and the town meeting most likely will cut down some more. I think that's important. I think that's a discussion. I think the town meeting should make that decision.
Very
so
good.
I don't think any one of this committee, and it was a great committee, were really vested in any of these.
Mm-hmm.
We just thought, okay, this is something the town should consider because we think it might make the town operate a little bit more smoothly.
I commend you and your group. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. Ann?
I was the liaison to this committee and went to a handful of meetings and know how hard everyone worked and how thoughtful everyone worked with the details. I think it's important for people to understand that a lot of the changes are not substantive. So when you mentioned that, for example, approving changes to reflect how the Board of Health currently operates, it was just wrong. The charter was dead wrong in how our Board of Health is organized, who's in charge, who reports to whom. And there was, there's a few other, the Housing Authority contradicted state law. So there were things that needed to be cleaned up from a perspective so our charter was accurate. Those changes aren't substantive. More substantive changes are with regard to the assessors being appointed rather than elected, a change in the amount of signatures needed for a petition. Those, I think, will get a healthy debate. And they should get a healthy debate, because we heard, you put out a call for public comments, and there were a lot of public comments on those, both pro and con. For example, on raising the number of petitions, that shouldn't be stopped here. That should go to town meeting, because so many people, frankly, were in favor of the raising, and we heard some people against it as well. So that's what town meeting is for. So I commend you for winnowing down you could have attacked the whole charter. It's an overwhelming process because it is so poorly written, not by Tom Mullen. So, the grammatical changes, just the punctuation being spine-tingling to someone who teaches that. Cleaning up that is awesome. So we have a charter we can be proud of, frankly, from an intellectual standpoint. But thank you for what you're doing. I think what you've proposed kind of get to the heart of what was needed. With regard to the Advisory Board of Public Works, that started out, I think, with people on the Charter Commission thinking it maybe should go away because of how it had been, the genesis of it, frankly. Why it was born was not, the agenda behind that is not something that I think really should have caused it to be born. But based on the letter written by the present chairperson, I was impressed by what he wrote, and if they are going to handle their business in that way, then status quo, that's okay.
Absolutely.
So thank you, all.
Any other questions from the board?
I know I raised this last time. I just wanted to confirm that the email notification piece, that is in addition to, not in lieu of. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm just concerned about, our elderly population. A number of folks don't have email, and I don't want them to feel disenfranchised from notifications as technology might outpace, an individual.
It was, yes, Ed, it was in addition to.
Right.
Certainly, as I said at our last meeting, I have a member of my committee who has a flip phone, and his email is me.
Well, and I think the charter didn't allow for email notification, so there was an addition to it, yes.
Julie?
I just have a process question. So when this comes to town meeting in November, the only thing that will be presented will be the recommendations. So this last page, it won't be open for reopening all of the other issues. Okay.
And Tom is in the process of drafting the articles.
Okay.
As soon as they're ready, we'll put them on the website. When we have, I believe it's 29th?
Of September,
Oh, yeah.
26th.
26th of September, we're having, here, we're going to have a public session.
Oh, excellent.
Folks will be allowed to call in, I guess, offer questions. We won't be able to talk to them. And, but it will be for the articles themselves, and to try to explain them. And some people have brought up some questions now, and quite frankly, I can't answer them, because I'm trusting the town council's gonna write the article. We just came up with the idea. Okay, this is what we'd like to change, and I'm gonna trust that Tom will do that. One of the suggestions that's gonna come up, and it has come up in writing, was on the transitional piece, section 8.1. Tom, that's up to you. Right now we have this transitional piece that sounds to us like it goes back to 1998, and what happens, when everything comes through. And we did realize that we're going to need a transitional piece on any of these changes, like the changes to the assessor, if people vote that, then we would need a transitional piece for that. So, but that's up to town council.
Ed?
I think the event on the 26th is great. I've been receiving a lot of feedback thus far on some of these. Obviously, some are more straightforward than others. I think it's really important that we take these next 2 months to keep that dialogue going so that things aren't kind of on hold until town meeting. Oftentimes at town meeting, I've noticed that, especially if there's a debated issue, there are questions that come up that may or may not have answers provided that night. And I think the more dialogue that can happen between now and town meeting would streamline the process at town meeting, have people's concerns raised, have their voices heard earlier on in the process and throughout. And I know that you have been doing that, so I commend you for that. But I think there's still more to be done. And now that you've made these recommendations, I think we're in a different phase. It seems like you were getting a lot of input from residents, and that's important. But now you're making recommendations, and so I think there's going to be another set of input from the community that is important that your group and we as a body consider before town meeting, so that it's not just, all right, we're going to have Tom write something up and then provide it in early November. I think that's just so critical to the process and transparency getting
I agree,
there.
Council. I would suggest that once we have the articles, we'll put the articles in there. And then, we'll have a meeting on the 27th here, get some input there. And then afterwards, what we did is had emails to the town website that would go to both Ally and I, and then we would distribute them to the committee, kind of consolidate them into one package so that people, heard that. I want to make sure that, people realize that, and I think our answers are going to be important in the sense that, look, you have a right to think what you want to think. So it's not to convince myself or my committee or Ally that this is not the way we should go. It's the forum is the town meeting, and that's where the argument has to come.
I guess I'm just thinking about, between now and then, the form in which, if someone has a question, they email to you, the committee then understands what the question is and can answer that to that person. But there might be 20 other people who have the same concern who may not be privy to what that answer is prior to town meeting. So if there's a way to communicate that so that that dialogue is open and ongoing during the process, I think it would help to streamline town meeting so that it's
I think that frequently asked questions could be used.
Exactly.
When we get a question, we
Absolutely.
put it back on the website and we come up with an answer.
I think that would be huge, because then it's out there. And
Yep.
not just that, but also in the newspaper as well, for those, again, who don't have internet access, so they can understand, so that dialogue is ongoing, because this is such a prime time, I think, now that you have these recommendations for the town to consider.
Cool.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I just have a quick question. The required signature change for the referendum to 5%, approximately how many voters is that? How many signatures?
900, was it?
Is it 900?
It was around 900.
Thank you.
Yeah, we struggle with that. And, there's a lot of input. A lot of people wanted 1,000, especially the folks who regularly go to town meeting. We just thought that might be too extreme a first shot, that let's take it a step at a time. We thought 3% was too little.
I'm very comfortable with 5%. Anyone else? No? Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Ally, thank you, committee. Thank you for your hard work.
Is that rain?
I think so. Next on our action item, we have the business district issues with the possible discussion of Police Chief Richard Smith. Chief, if you could come. Thank you.
I'm looking for guidance here. I was asked to be here to talk about issues downtown, but quite frankly, I have heard nothing since then. I can only guess. at
Who
what-
asked you, Chief?
I
I'm
think
sorry.
Peter.
I'm
Oh,
sorry?
Peter, okay,
Peter.
I'm sorry. I was just asking who asked
Do
you.
you know the background, Steve, at all?
I think Peter was sharing some concerns that business owners shared with him regarding some indelicate issues that were occurring downtown. It may be, I think a couple of councilors had mentioned maybe we want to wait for Peter. He seemed to have a hot button on this, but if others want to go forward. He did not ask to have it moved, but I think that's what he was discussing at the meeting. I hate that the chief had to come
Yeah.
out, but maybe he was going to come out on the next one anyway, so. I don't feel quite as bad. But that was the genesis of that. This was Peter's request.
Paul?
I'll make a request in the form of a motion that we table this to our meeting on the 27th to have,
Only if chief can come.
Right.
oh, then the chief
Why
can't.
don't you just table it to a future meeting?
Future meeting, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So the motion on the floor is to table this to a future meeting.
Second.
Do you have a date on that meeting? Or is we,
First meeting in October?
Was the 27th okay with you?
that's a Thursday, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a,
I can't make it on a Thursday night. On that, I can't make it on that, let me do my math here. Would it be 7 o'clock?
Well, if it's difficult, we can put it in whatever's
Yeah.
convenient for you. We're always here, chief, so your
Yeah,
schedule.
I can't make it on the
No,
27th.
That's fine.
then let's,
Yep.
how about at a future meeting that we can?
In October.
we can
To be agreed.
establish, yeah.
And for discussion, I just want better clarification of what,
Right.
business district issues makes no sense to me.
MEHREEN, the person who brought it up, is not here today.
So I just want it
Okay.
reflected in the notes. I'm not, no, I'm just saying that, if it's gonna be put on a further agenda, I actually, so I'm prepared and people from watching are prepared to know what exactly is being discussed.
So the
you
motion
know.
on the floor has been seconded. Do I have discussion?
That was my discussion, so my
Okay.
discussion was,
Okay.
please amend the agenda.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, all those in favor of tabling to a future meeting?
Aye.
With a
Opposed?
specific agenda, yes.
Yes, with a specific agenda.
Mr. Chairman, can I just suggest, since the chief is here, I think it falls under business issues, but not business district issues. We had raised previously the issue of Lakeside Inn, and I know that we had asked the chief, or we had said we'd have the chief get data for us relative to Lakeside Inn. I know there have been a number of occurrences there. With your indulgence.
It is not on the agenda, Ed, but we'll allow the chief a couple of minutes on this. I know that the question was, how much time do your men in the fire department spend at the Lakeside Inn?
Well, I certainly cannot speak for Chief Sullivan, but I can tell you that the way our coding system works, we respond specifically to addresses, address numbers. And in the last, since January of 2017 to date, we've had 122 calls. Now, what I did when I looked into this, I backed out motor vehicle because that could be anything. There's an on and off ramp there, there's a lot of accidents there. There's a set of lights there. It's a really busy traffic place for us. There's a lot of accidents, there's a lot of car stops out there, pretty aggressively enforced, so I backed those out because of fairness to any building there, it really doesn't reflect our activity.
So I would just ask then, at a future meeting, I think that I should ask, how does that compare with other businesses, other similar establishments in town?
I hope
Want me to answer that now? There's quite a few calls for service up there.
So I think that's something we should add to a future agenda. and let it-
But bear in mind, those are not calls to the licensed premises. Those are calls to the hotel.
Yep.
It's all the same address, but as I went through the calls, they're not related to the licensed premise. Otherwise, I would have sent a memo to the licensing authority relative to that. But these calls are all relative to the hotel and the parking lot specifically.
And generally, who's making those calls, chief? Not particularly, but are they coming from people who are renting rooms there or neighbors that live by? Do we know the general?
Yeah, I know exactly who the calls came from, but
Yeah.
I can tell you that most of the calls are generated from the inside.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, we don't get many calls from the neighbors. Quite frankly, there's no neighbors up there.
Right.
The only neighbors are on the south end, and
Yeah.
they're pretty much removed from the main entrance
So
and that
it's
end
coming
of the
from the
parking lot.
inside, okay.
The north end of the parking lot is more of a busier place for us.
Thank you.
Anything else on Lakeside Inn? So our next discussion is on the public safety building. discussion regarding possible renovations. Ed, I'm going to turn this over to you, as you are the police department liaison. And Chief, if you could stay right where you are, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. So I had the opportunity, actually, over the last few months to sit down with Chief Smith. We've been in contact regularly, Mr. Mayo as well, Permanent Building Committee, Chairman, Finance, et cetera, in light of the vote that we had on the public safety building. And the issues with the public safety building remain. And that is despite the vote that happened in town. And so I think we're at a point now where we have a careful balancing. We have needs that are currently being unmet that need to be met for our public safety. We also have the will of voters at town meeting who voted in one way, and we have the will of the voters in the general special election who voted in a different way. And so there's a real balancing there that has to go on. I think the best takeaway from that process was that there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And our hope and our goal is to make sure that we have answered every question that was raised through a very long process to make sure that every person feels as if their thoughts were considered and vetted, and determining ways on how we can make this a better project, potentially, going forward. Because there's no question, and I think even those that were opposed to the building as it was presented at last town meeting, even those that were opposed, were not opposed to the need to do something for public safety. So the question is, all right, what do we need to do differently as a town to make sure that we as a town are comfortable with the path forward and this issue? And so based on a number of discussions and many with the chief, it seems like the most prudent next step would be to establish a committee, a public safety building reassessment committee that would, in essence, be looking at all the different considerations, all the issues that were raised during the process last time, and then do a reassessment of where we go from this point forward. Because again, these problems are not going away. It's just a question of how we solve them. And we're absolutely confident we can solve them, but we're going to have to figure out how that's done. And so I'm proposing to my fellow council folks tonight that we start that process. And this is just a committee that will consider all of the issues, consider the viability of the project, and then ultimately report back to this body and ultimately the town as a whole. It would be a committee of 15 that I'm proposing, and that takes into account a number of different folks that we think are important in this. Chief Smith, obviously, Chief Sullivan, our chief of the fire department, our deputy chief of the police department, the chairman of the permanent building committee, our town administrator, an additional member of the permanent building committee, 2 members from the finance committee, Mr. Stinson, Director of Public Works, a captain of the Wakefield Fire Department, and importantly, 3 members of the community at large. So these would be 3 folks that we would post for this in the newspaper, on the website, on social media platform, Facebook, and then appoint those folks as a council. Have another counselor from this town council and myself as the police liaison. And the goal would be to assemble this group as soon as we can, once we've gone through and selected the members at large, the community members that we think would make sense to help advance it along, and then dive right into it and look at what we can do and how we can do it to make sure that we meet the needs of public safety and also meet the expectations of our community, and specifically the residents. So with that, I'm looking to make a motion to have this committee established tonight, with the understanding that we would then post for the 3 members at large. Then when we got resumes back on that, consider and then appoint those folks. And only then would we meet as a committee, once we have those 3 folks in place, and then go forward on this.
So if I have this correct, the motion on the floor is to establish a 15-member committee to reassess the public safety building and where we're going to it in the future.
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion?
Dan?
I think it would be really important to get, 2 to 3 voices who spoke out vehemently against this project.
I could not agree more.
Put your money where your mouth is. Join the committee, try to make it better, don't stand on the sidelines and lob bombs. Work with us. So I hope 1 to 2 or even 3, because clearly the majority of the committee supports this project. They supported it after tremendous amount of work in the past. So I hope that we get people who were vociferous in arguing against the project.
I agree. I think that's why it's important that we have 3 members at large. This is somewhat modeled off of Finance Committee. I was speaking with Mr. Mayo about this earlier, and it's a 15-member committee, but 3 members of the public at large I think is important because we want those voices. We want a diversity of voices in this process. This is not intended to just have the same project brought before the voters again. This is intended to incorporate, understand, and better appreciate all the voter concerns that were raised that brought us to the point that we are now, to make sure that ultimately we end up with a better project as a result. And so I absolutely agree, Ann. And I should be clear too, this is just a committee to guide this process. There will no doubt be much public participation in forums in any number of ways. So even if someone is not selected to be on this committee, they will have as loud a voice as anyone that has been selected on it. And I think that's an important piece to this. The public participation, the transparency and the openness about this is something that everyone with whom I've spoken understands the importance. That's what we're looking to do.
Any other questions? Mary?
So I want to second what Ann said. I hope we get folks who see on both sides of this issue. I'm gonna ask Ed for you to think a little wider about this. So we have folks in town government, within our municipality, who work on the issues that affect public safety. And I think we need to look a little broader about who is on this committee. And so I'm specifically thinking of someone from the Board of Health, somebody from WAVE, somebody from Wake Up. I think they add a voice about what policing is like, what public safety is like going forward, and the needs. Some of the needs that the chief spoke about are actually social issues. It's not, we kind of know what the permanent building committee feels about this, and the finance committee. I think we need input from the social services of this town, because public safety, with the work that the chief does, is the lifeline of social services, but we have groups that work on it. And I'm really going to push for us from Wake Up, WAVE, and Board of Health, and that's off the top of my head, but I think we need people dedicated from there, not just coming to public forums, but actually part of the committee.
Julie?
And I would just add to that schools, because we have, school resource officers and, maybe even think outside the box a little bit, MBTA. We have a lot of people coming into town from outside, and so just really think broad and think deep about the purpose of the building, not just the construction of the building.
Further discussion? I'm just going to add in that, maybe going forward, we can have a mission statement to find out what the ultimate objective is for this committee. Because right now, we just have a 15-member board. So if we could have.
I think that makes sense. Right, it's a 50-member board, and 6 of the slots are not even identified, or 7 of the slots are not even identified yet. So we have the opportunity to have folks in place that will offer that diversity of opinion, certainly. I agree with you, though, absolutely. And I think that as a body starting off this process, it's important for the committee to understand what its charge is. So going forward, we're all meeting that same objective. I certainly agree. The social services piece is huge. It's a huge part of this, and looping social services, looping in the school resource officers, absolutely important. The mental health is such an important part of 21st century policing. Understand that, and the needs are different. The chief has spoken at length about that, and I think the chief speaks with some authority in his own understanding and his own experience of 40 years or thereabouts now, how that's changed. There's no question that that's going to be a part, it needs to be a part of this. It needs to, undoubtedly, and that's a big part of the discussion.
Chief?
Mr. Chair, through you, have to say this the right way.
When has that been an issue for you?
I couldn't be more in agreement that the group that I have in front of me needs either an addition or a tweaking. I agree with Ed, and we've talked quite a bit. As my liaison, we've had a lot of conversation, but I do have to agree with the conversation we just had, is that because policing has changed, it's no longer about cell blocks anymore. It's about social services. It's about reaching out to the public. It's Wave and Wake Up, groups that we started, that started with this police department under this administration, our Human Rights Commission, social services, our Board of Health. Policing, the police station is the portal to the social service system in this country and in this town. So in addition to, and we may want to tweak this list as presented, I can see some adjustments in there that I think should probably be made, because we will never get anything done with a committee of 25 people. But we do have to make sure that the social service piece, which is the biggest piece that we deal with right now, and let's not forget the traffic side of the house too. There should be somebody there who can talk to us, who has expertise in traffic, so that we're going through a building boom right now. We have to be talking about parking, not parking outside of the building, but parking 2 and 3 and 4 blocks away. And that's going to affect how we operate. People are saying, well, what's that got to do with the building chief? Well, if we think it through, everything that deals with policing goes through that building. So when we put this committee together, Ed, I think that maybe we should have another discussion and think about how do we get Wave in there. I agree with you, and I agree with MEHREEN that we've got to get these people, that group of people into this. But somehow, again, I'm opposed to a committee of 25 people because we'll never get anything done. And my goal is to get this building done. We need it. We know we need it. I think we put an incredible product in front of town meeting last time. For whatever reason, it didn't pass, so we'll go back to the drawing board, we'll make it better, and we'll listen to what they say. But the one voice we didn't hear was about the Wave and the Wake Up and the social service side of the house. So I'm all for it, and I'll work as hard as I can to make sure that happens. So I want to thank you, Ed, for the conversation on this and putting this together.
So Ed, do you want to withdraw your motion and come back and work with Chief Smith to kind of retweak the members of this committee?
I think the issue we have is that if we want to begin this discussion, we need to move forward with a committee. And I think it's naive to assume that without naming particular members onto a committee, that we're not going to be hearing those voices. I mean, I agree with you, MEHREEN. You know, like Wave, Wake Up,
Right.
but you're talking about adding another 5 people onto this, and there
I'm talking about relooking at this list and, as Julie said, looking at it not as building a building, but as what's inside the building. And I also echo what Councilor Longo said about actually, you know, a list of 15 names doesn't talk about what the vision is, what the goal is, anything like that. And that to me is really important, because I don't know what 15 of you are gonna sit around and talk about. So I would like some serious consideration about who else is on this group. I agree, a group of 15 is not 25, but I would look past some of the names that are the physical building of it, the construction of the building, and what goes inside the building and the people that is served by inside the building. And the schools are a wonderful example. We have 6 school officers, resource officers. You know, that's a big consideration of who's inside the building now that wasn't there when it was built.
So are you assuming that if there isn't someone appointed, that they're not going to have a voice in this process?
Say that again?
Are you assuming that if there's not someone...
Let's still kind of work through the chair. Okay.
I mean, is the assumption then that if there's not... I mean, the thing is, there are so many... I agree, the Human Rights Commission, you know, they should be spoken with. Wave, Wake Up, school officers. I mean, they're senior service, our senior services. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of stakeholders here. I think the notion of representing every stakeholder on this committee is going to result in a committee of about 50 people. And that's, I don't think it's anything more than a function of, entrusting that having a committee, again, 3 members at large that haven't been named. I think if our goal with appointing those folks is someone that has a social services bend, that's probably an important appointment. That would probably be given more consideration than someone who does not have that, given that that's where, we have to fill in the holes here. So that was more the expectation. There's an open spot for a town councilor. I mean, MEHREEN, you're the liaison to social services. That seems like you would be a good point person, as an example, because you would then come having, spoken with any number of these groups. So I think that we need to be somewhat mindful of our size and looking at this. This is a building ultimately, so the Permanent Building Committee, they need to be represented. The police need to be represented. The fire department needs to be represented. So there's not a lot of fat to be trimmed here in terms of some of the more, I'll call it, essential folks to execute on a potential project. And that's not to say that there's not equal input that would be received from those with more of a social services background. In fact, it needs to be. We agree on that. But I think there are opportunities even within this structure to allow for that.
Julie?
I think the reason that we're at this point is because we had differing opinions and differing information in public on this. And so I really think that this committee is as important for who sits on it as kind of the message that it sends. And I think having 12 out of 15 people on this committee who presumably have already spent a year plus thinking about this does not bring a lot of fresh information to the table. And so I would propose that we keep it at 15 because larger than that certainly is unwieldy. But I think that we figure out how to get 5 members of the public at large, and that gives us a pretty good pool from which to get diverse voices from social services and schools and senior centers and all the ones that have been mentioned. So that would be my opinion.
Chief?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to point out that putting this plan together and moving forward, and believe me, I'm the biggest social service guy in the police department, I'll tell you that right now. But I will tell you this, that we can't forget the core mission too. We're the 911 center. We are, as far as emergency operations, we're the emergency operations center for the town. We have an incredible responsibility beyond anybody, any other agency, any other department in the town for emergency services and making sure that people are serviced in a proper, safe way. A lot of that has to do with policy. A lot of that has to do with planning. A lot of that has to do with training. We need emergency management at the table here because in addition to a social service piece that has been layered on top of law enforcement over the years and continues to build and has taken a larger bubble, if you will, we still have a core mission to provide where we are the 911 center, and we have the responsibility for all of that. We have all the responsibility for writing policy for the schools on how to respond in emergencies. We have all the responsibilities on how to back up and support the Melrose Wakefield Hospital and if we have a major event. If we have a major hurricane, we have to keep that in mind too. So I think it's very important, snowstorm, whatever it is. All this should be, if it isn't, it should be running through the police department because we're the ones that are answering the calls. So we have this piece over here, and now we have the social service piece over here, and we have to bring them together. And I think it's most important that we don't lose the historic role of law enforcement, and that's the wrong word, public safety. But we also have to make sure that in this committee we bring in a large piece, a social service piece. So we have to, this is a very delicate balance. But I think when we present this to the people of the town of Wakefield, we have to make them understand, or give them the opportunity to understand that our role, police service role, is getting bigger, bigger, bigger every day. And as somebody said here tonight, it's not just about a building, it's about the service provided. And that changes and grows every day. So I don't want to lose, when we look at this list, I want to make sure that we don't lose that concrete piece of providing emergency services and making sure that basically when the fur flies, we're able to, you know, step in and make sure that and restore peace and calm and tranquility.
Paul?
Ed, you put together a great list of people, and my fellow councilors have made strong points as far as who should be considered to be put on here. Ian made a great point, I thought, with saying, you know, you need the ones that are most vocal critics to be said, you know, put up or shut up. Okay, this is the time that you really want to come out now. If you really have something objecting to this, put your money where your mouth is right now and come on to it. Maureen brought up a good point as far as bringing in the social services. I do agree with you. You can't go bigger than the 15. So how do you do that without really cutting back on who you have on your list? Could you develop a secondary committee, subcommittee of this first committee to take in the social services aspect of it?
I think it's, if I may.
Yes.
I think it's important, in talking with our town administrator and speaking with the chief, the whole intention of this committee was to be able to, in essence, silo out, so that this committee, there would be a few members that would be focused on various aspects of a potential project. So yeah, to answer your point, yes, it would be, okay, there's X, Y, and Z members. They're going to be tasked with focusing on this aspect of it, say the social services aspect. They would reach out to Wake Up, Respond, Jane Doe, all the kind of, the senior center, all the kind of social service components that are critical to consider as a part of this. So the answer is yes. So this is the body that would move things forward, but it's not 15 people making decisions. It's 15 people tasked with going out, reaching into the community, understanding where the concerns lie, understanding where the needs are greatest, and then coming back to make sure that everything is addressed. Because candidly, if that doesn't happen, there will be no forward movement on any sort of public safety improvements. And I don't know what that means exactly at this point. I'm going into this with an open mind. I know that the town has been very mixed in terms of what is right, what is the best course forward, and I recognize that. So I'm not saying we're talking about this massive building. I don't know what it is yet. I think that will come from the discussions that are yet to be had. But the idea of having a group of folks, many of whom are on this committee, are positioned as they need to be, because if there was to be a building, and if it was a renovation of some sort, then permanent building is an important part of that. Finance committee is a huge part of that. Those are all considerations. So the town administrator's involvement, chief and Chief Sullivan as well, huge parts of that. So this is just a starting point. This is not, the discussion and the focus isn't limited to only what these folks who have been identified are going to bring to the table.
And I respect,
they're ambassadors.
And I respect that, Ed. So I'm going to go back to the last comment then, is that maybe we do need to have that mission statement, okay, which spells out exactly what you just said now, because that will make it a lot easier moving forward. This is good. I'm not saying that, but in order to address everyone's needs, I think that is what's going to be now, is what you just said right now, as a response to my answer. That's what has to be put down on paper, that's how things are gonna be, so everyone knows what the course of action will be, and it's all gonna focus on your mission statement, because this is the reassessment committee, so we're still talking about doing something to the existing building, okay, and how do we get that done? By making the most of it, by getting out the best information to the public as possible, by bringing in the right people to present, okay? And that could be the public at large people. So who are the public at large? So whoever submits. I hope that more of the ones that are saying nay all the time put their name on the list, because those are the ones that are really going to have to say, prove your statement to us, instead of just making a statement and running. Okay, so that's all. I'm good as far as this is.
Actually, Ann's next.
I would disagree a little bit with Julie as to why we ended up here. I don't think it was just because of simple disagreements, but I agree. The list can't be too long. I don't think we need to add a school resource officer, because I trust you and Deputy Chief Calabrese to bring in the school officers if needed. I do agree with Maureen, though. even if we add one voice from social services who can then bring in everyone else, because we don't want an unwieldy committee, but I do think it's important to have a named member of that committee from the part of Board of Health that deals with that. I mean, I'm forgetting her first name. Catherine Dingras is a no-brainer on this committee because of her understanding of those social issues that happen in the schools, and I think she's, you know, she's lovely to work with, and she can tap the other resources. I think having one named person from social services doesn't make the list too unwieldy, in my mind.
Yeah. Ironically, Steve and I were both kind of tweaking this list on our separate sides, and we both came up with the same changes. One was to remove one member of the Permanent Building Committee, replace it with a Wake Up, remove a Finance Committee person, replace it with a WAVE, and remove one of the town councilors and replace it with a Board of Health member. I mean, Ed, you are, and Steve represent the town council. I think the Permanent Building Committee and Finance Committee would only need one person each there.
Because you could have subcommittees that bring in the people we just took away
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. So those are my recommendations, and I think that kind of serves or meets everybody's needs involved, and it keeps the 3 open positions. So we still have a motion on the floor, though. Ed?
I think if we're taking off a permanent building committee member, that leaves the chairman of the permanent building committee. And at its core, this is an assessment of what a building renovation, modification, adjustment would look like. And I think we're doing a disservice to the facility by taking a member off. I think that's a pretty crucial person. You know, the finance committee, I think a big part of the reason that there was disagreement about this project was the finances, and it's a lot of money that was asked of this town last go around, and I think reasonable representation by finance committee is important to that. I think our town relies upon finance committee doing a good amount of due diligence. I think that's something, and that's not to take away from Wake Up Wave or the Board of Health, all of whom I think are important. I do think that we also have 3 members at large as well, so I'm a little bit reluctant to take off permanent building and finance committee, but I do think incorporating the Wave/Wake Up/ Board of Health is important. I think Catherine, as your example, Ann, is a great one. I mean, and she can assemble together, you know, the sentiments of other groups, because she does work across the board. So I'm a little bit hesitant about that, because ultimately this becomes an issue of, it is a building, and it's how we're potentially modifying a building. So I don't think we should be light on the building and financial aspect of it.
Chief?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Ed, just a suggestion. I mean, I see some names on here, and I'm not going to get into it because I'm not going to get into it. But I see some names on here that I don't think are really going to serve us of any value. But people like Catherine Dingra and others are a tremendous partner of ours.
Mm-hmm.
But Ed's right. I would rather seek their input than have them have a seat at the table. If we're going to try to, if we have to come in with a number, and not a really large number, there are certain people that could be set outside of this list. But as Ed said, and I think, Ann, you talked to it, having subcommittees. So you take 3, you're responsible for this, you take 3, you're responsible for that, whatever, however that works out. Taking their personal time away to sit at a number of meetings is really it does them a disservice. It doesn't do us a good service. I would think that it might be better to either keep the list where it is. I'm not saying the names, keep the names where it is, but keep the list at the number that it's at or less. But let these people know that we're going to be soliciting their input, their written input, so we have it documented on what we need. If a certain person comes to us and says, you need a whatever type of room, yeah, that may be a good point, but that may not be fiscally or buildable, depending on if, if we're at that location and we're gonna, how much money are we gonna spend and this and that and the other thing. So would it be better to use a lot of people, and I'm not saying just social service people, I'm saying some other people, as a resource, than to have them sitting at meetings twiddling their thumbs because we're not talking about issues that are dear to them. So, I mean, building police stations and fire stations, and I should say public safety facilities, are not popular. Building police stations are really not the most popular. But from my perspective, and from Chief Sullivan's perspective, they're the most important. Show me another building in town that's not as important as your public safety facility. And I'll eat my hat, that's right here on my table. So, so I suggest that maybe we look at this committee, we might want to look at this list again, and maybe some people on the list should be set back a little bit and others brought forward. But nonetheless, all of the disciplines that we've talked about here tonight are very important to this project and where we're going to go and where we're going to go as a community. That'd be my suggestion at this point.
Quick. Couldn't we still move forward on advertising from the public at large, members of the public at large, for the reassessment committee and tweak the list in a certain way? So we wouldn't stop in the process to move forward to hopefully get a building that is viable for the town. So, and I agree, Chief, we're probably on the same page. There's a few people there, I think, or positions we could shift over to put a bit on the subcommittee that don't need to be on this main part. Bringing up someone from social services for at least one person to me makes sense. Having named subcommittees, I mean, I think there's things we can do to address exactly what Maureen was saying, to have that voice at the table at all times, and then have subcommittees that really go to town on certain issues. So, I don't know how you feel about that, Ed, or if we want to tweak the motion to, move forward with advertising for members of public at large to be posted. For 3 of them, for the Wakefield Public Safety Building Reassessment Committee, the full committee to be named or decided by such and such a date.
This is a list that I had worked on with our town administrator and our police chief. So this is something that, it's not my own creation. I've run it through, so my understanding was that this checked all the necessary boxes in terms of moving forward. And we independently all spoke about the idea of this committee being more ambassadors to the broader concerns of the community. I mean, you're not going to have all concerns of the community represented by 15 individuals. I think the fact that we had a lot of folks that are familiar with this project, and even if they were in support of it, that's not a bad thing, because those that were in support of it last time, they didn't win ultimately at the ballot box. And so that can be a very eye-opening experience to understand what needs to be done differently. So they have, that I'll call it, those battle scars at this point. So going forward, I think that's an asset, not a liability, and I don't think it's a predetermination, because if anyone thinks that the same project is going to be presented before the town again, then you're really taking away from the will of the town. So it's not going to happen. So the question is, all right, well, what did you learn from this? And if you were intimately involved with it for the past year and a half, I think you probably learned a lot, and you probably had a lot of experience, and you've thought through and understand what the issues were, and you know what needs to be looked at in a different way this go around. I don't have an issue with that, Ann. Again, this is this is not my hand-picked list of we need to have these folks. I absolutely agree. Social services, mental health services need to be a part of this consideration. In what capacity? I'm open to. I see this group though as not exclusive of other thoughts or considerations. I see this group as an assemblage of ambassadors, many of whom are in town positions that necessitate or we expect their engagement with this process. So I just see these folks as folks that can funnel through information to be considered, by the body. But I'm open.
And I, sorry,
Yeah.
Tony,
I
I just
can't
want
see
to
it. You gotta
echo.
put a hand
I
up
know,
front.
Paul's blocking me. And I just want to echo, I understand you came to us, it's a great list. I think we're tweaking it. I think that's what we do out here in public. We haven't
Totally.
had this discussion in 2 months since the vote was taken. This is the first time as a council we're discussing it. I actually really appreciate Steve and Tony's recommendation. You know, it's very important to have someone from finance there and someone from permanent building and somebody from our council. I'm pushing back. I don't think we need 2 from finance, and we don't need 2 people. If the committee is going to work as the committee does and share information and then go back, makes sense to have 2 from public safety and from the fire, but maybe we don't need 2 from all those other ones. I'm just going to reiterate their suggestion.
Ed?
I don't think there's a single person that last go around complained that this project didn't consider social services in this town in arriving at that project. I think there were a lot of people that raised concerns about the cost of the project and the ways in which that building could be built differently. So I do think that if we're going to listen to what the people had to say last go around and understand where people saw deficiencies, it's important that we bulk up that aspect of the team Wakefield, to do that. If there was anyone that raised, I don't know of a single concern that said this is not properly addressing the social service environment that we have in this community. In fact, there was nothing but praise for what this building would have done in terms of domestic violence survivor spaces to meet with counselors and the like. So I don't agree that it should be, we should strip away the financial considerations and the building considerations, because I didn't understand that to be an issue of anyone who raised issues last go around, and I don't think we have to lose sight. We can't lose sight of that. We have to address what the townspeople have identified as their concerns, and make sure that we're doing it in as thorough a way as we can. And I think that's why bulking that is important.
Julie?
I don't think that is what Maureen's saying. I think she's just saying that we have functional committees in the public, on the permanent building committee and on the finance committee, and that letting them work through their committee, they can communicate, and that gives us a couple of new, fresh, doesn't have to be from social services, but 1/3 of the committee to be some fresh perspective.
Mary? Good.
Ditto. I think we have committees set up. I don't think people are against social services. That is not what I was saying at all. That's not what I heard. I will go back that we need to do a better job explaining what social services the police department does in our town. But yes, I think we have committees set up and they can report. As you talk about, this is going to be open for everyone. Do we need 2 people sitting at the table from the same committee? Or do you feed into the committee that you already have and tell that person to, hey, these are my concerns, this is what I'm raising. So that's just, we have committees set up already. I don't know if I need to be there if you're already going to be there, because I trust that I can have that conversations with you, and I would rather have that seat be with someone else offering a fresh perspective, so it's not 12 of the same people that have, not only for the past year, multiple years had this conversation.
So we still have a motion on the floor to approve the committee as stated. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, was it motion made and seconded, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
I think you seconded it, Paul.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor as the board or the subcommittee as stated? All those opposed?
So how'd the vote go down, Mr. Chair?
Went down to, what was it, 4-2 or 2-4?
Okay.
So, Ed, I'm just gonna ask you to retweak this and come back. Again, I shared Steve's thoughts.
Can I make another suggestion?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Before being
Yeah.
naive. What if we upped it to 17? And you added a member of WAVE, you added a member of Wake Up, and based on the comments around here, that you changed the town council, the second town council member, to someone from the Board of Health. That's 2 extra people, I get it, it's a little bit more. It seems to address everybody's concerns. The chief said there's very critical people on there, we certainly don't want to take any of them off. 17 is more than 15, and that is probably okay, because I think that there's going to be a lot of individual work being done. There shouldn't be 17 people sitting around a table all talking. So that may be a compromise that gets some of those other critical items in there that we've talked about a lot over the past 10 years or so. So that would be my suggestion, if that's okay with Ed. I think you did a great job putting this together.
I am completely open to whatever is going to move this reassessment along, because I think every day that goes by that we're not addressing the issues is a compromise for our town. You know, it's unfortunate.
Chief Smith?
Mr. Chairman, to Ed, might I suggest, I will make a suggestion, that we replace the fire captain with the emergency management director.
Well, I think we've made a couple of suggestions, but we can't make motions. We can't vote.
All right, so
The chief
why
and
don't I
I.
make a motion?
Yep.
All right, so I'll make a motion then that we add on 2 additional slots, one a member from WAVE, the other a member from Wake Up, that we replace the fire captain slot with the emergency management director, and that we replace the second town councilor spot with a member of the Board of Health.
I'll second.
Discussion? Ann?
Just, I went back and forth on the fire captain. There's a reason why I think the fire captain should be on there. However, I believe that that could also be a subcommittee, that for part of the building that is affecting the fire department in a more significant way, I would ask that this committee, Chief Sullivan would bring in one of his top folks to have a voice in that. So, but I think that's a good move.
So it's a motion on, Ed?
I should also point out, these are not closed-door meetings. I mean,
Right.
anybody that wants to come, and candidly, with these kind of committees, you have a vote now and again, but for the most part, you're doing work outside. So it's not like this is, anybody that wants to show up can show up, participate, express their concerns. I mean, that's the point of this. This is meant to be a vehicle to allow for the discussion and dialogue to go forward. There are a lot of folks that are opposed to the idea of doing much to this building at all. I want to make sure that their voices are heard too, certainly.
I agree.
Mehreen, did you have something?
Ed, it's great, you keep on clarifying more what the committee does, and that's why it would just be helpful to know what the vision is, because that, even knowing they're open meetings to everyone.
Well, I mean, there's nothing special about this committee. That's what a committee is. I mean, all committees in town are open. They're all open.
FinCom, not all open. We have closed
That's open.
meetings.
FinCom?
Executive session.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, they have to be open.
They have to be
Okay.
open.
So,
Even liaison meetings.
oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So do we have a motion
It
for
has been
Steve's
seconded?
recommendation?
I second it.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna add Ed, come back next meeting with maybe a mission statement, so we can kind of follow along here. But there's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. All those in favor of the committee, newly adjusted committee?
Aye.
Aye,
All those opposed? 6-0.
excellent.
Thank you for making my first day as chairman fun.
Thank you.
I got a lot more to go.
Thank you, Chief.
Someone's yelling at each other.
Thanks,
Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Lieutenant Scory, we have some traffic advisory recommendations.
Hi, Lieutenant.
Try to make this quick.
Bless you.
Recently, the Traffic Advisory Committee had several meetings, and there were a number of issues discussed there. As a result of that, we, the Traffic Advisory Committee, have 5 issues that we put forward to Town Council as recommendations for your approval. The first one is a request from a resident to restrict parking on Charles Street where it intersects with Main Street. Currently, vehicles are parking on Charles Street too close to the Main Street intersection. This narrows the roadway and limits sight visibility for vehicles that turn onto Charles Street from Main Street. There's also a crosswalk on Charles Street that goes from the north side of the street to the south side. and vehicles parked too close to the crosswalk could block the view of pedestrians utilizing the crosswalk. As a result, the TAC is recommending that no parking here to corner signs be installed on both the north and south sides of Charles Street, 40 feet east of the Main Street curb line. What this would do is limit the vehicles parking around the intersection, create site visibility and safety for the pedestrians.
So the vote to approve the request for a no parking here to corner sign to be installed on both the north and south sides of Charles Street, 40 feet east of Main Street.
So moved. Seconded.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
The second issue that we addressed was a request for signs on Water Street at the intersection with Crescent Street that advise motorists not to block the intersection. It's common for traffic to back up on Water Street and for vehicles on Water Street to be blocking the intersection when the signals change and Crescent Street has a green light. As a result, the TSC is recommending one sign for westbound traffic on Water Street and one sign for eastbound traffic on Water Street that reads "Do not block intersection."
Possible vote to approve the request for one sign for the westbound traffic on Water Street and one sign for the eastbound traffic on Water Street that reads "Do not block intersection."
At what location?
Water Street and Crescent. That would be next to the gas station.
Crescent's not mentioned on it, that's what I'm asking. It says Water Street, one sign, eastbound traffic on Water Street.
No,
So I just didn't know which street it was.
by Crescent Street.
Okay.
Paul.
Thank you.
And it's,
Okay.
I think Ann moved it.
I need a second. Second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The third topic was a request from the residents of Davidson Road for some relief from the parking at the Walton School. Over the course of 2 TAC meetings, we met with a number of Davidson Road residents who voiced their frustration with the parking situation on their street. Complaints included parents who arrived 45 minutes early in the afternoon for student pickup, idling vehicles, blocked driveways, and overflow parking from the school that sometimes lasts all day. Currently, parking is allowed on one side of Davidson Road during the day. The south side of Davidson Road is posted with signs that prohibit parking between the hours of 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. The residents have requested that the north side of the street be restricted to resident parking only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. The TAC is in agreement with this request and is recommending that the north side of Davidson Road be posted with signs that read resident parking only 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday.
So we have a possible vote to approve the request that the north side of Davidson Road be posted with signs that read resident parking only from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday.
So moved for discussion.
Okay?
Second.
Ann?
It will be pathetic
if anyone complains and argues about what we're about to vote in. Because as a parent who would park on Parker and walk an extra 50 yards as opposed to sitting there reading my texts with my idling car in front of people's houses, you know, don't be lazy. Go park on Parker and walk and get your child. I have no patience for anyone pushing back, and I appreciate the residents of Davidson being annoyed by that because the parents picking up were quite entitled at times. I was one of those parents for a long time, but never parked on Davidson, ever. I parked down the street, I walked and got my child.
Julie?
So if it's no parking, will they still sit there and idle, though? Because idling is not parking, right?
If you're idling, you're
You're
parked.
parking.
It is considered, parking is, okay.
Correct.
Okay, I thought it was a different definition. I mean, I am bothered in general in town about the idling, particularly during school pickup, and if there's any, maybe that's a topic for another.
It is something we, because it is against the law.
Right, yeah.
It is something we tackled with recreation when I was on that board. It is almost impossible to enforce.
Okay.
But I totally agree with you.
Just raise it.
Ed?
Lieutenant, if it said resident parking or standing only, would that not address
be clearer to those driving that you can't be idling? Because I think if I see no standing, it means, all right, I have to move on.
Right.
Whereas parking, like, I'm not parking, I'm
Right,
just
as long
kind
as
of
you're in
in
the car,
this,
'cause
I'm
you're
in the,
not parking.
yeah,
You
so.
could tow them while they were in their car.
Seriously.
We had a discussion on the wording of the signs, and we felt that resident parking only was the best remedy here. The residents they'll be able to get a parking sticker, they'll still be able to park out in front of the street. The issue that the neighbors raised was, there's some people there that work midnights, they come home, they have to shuffle cars, they have a single lane driveway, they need to shuffle cars with their spouses in and out, so they still needed a place to park. So we wanted to entitle them to have parking in front of their own homes.
I think Ed's right. I think some of these people will read parking as parking, and if they're sitting in their
literal.
car flipping through their texts, I do think standing, or some, you're gonna have to have an officer there knocking on the doors, reminding these people that, move it.
Could,
I don't know.
Ed?
could we say resident parking or standing only?
I can pass that by the VHB consultant, I don't see a problem with that.
I just think it's clearer because I would say, oh, I'm just staying here for a couple minutes in my running car. I think I think parking has a different connotation to most drivers.
Paul?
Can I make a suggestion that we just use the same signs that we used on Armory Street? Resident sticker only. Eliminate parking and standing completely. It works on Armory Street.
No, because they don't think they are parking. They think they are there waiting to pick their precious
But
bundle
sign
up.
says resident sticker only.
Yeah.
It's been working now for what, a year?
But not many people would park on
Okay.
Armory to grab their
Okay.
kids.
I just try to do the easy way out.
I just know my people over there, and I just know they're gonna push the buttons.
Lieutenant, I'm gonna leave it up to your good
There will
judgment.
be people who test the waters, as there are everywhere.
Yep.
And we will address the issue. I think that,
Awesome.
my opinion is to just leave it as resident parking only.
Okay.
And if we have to
8 AM
revisit
to
it, we
4
can.
PM, and if we have to address the
Teach
issue
them.
with the standing people, we'll do that. The school's been accommodating, they've been very good, they'll help with that.
Great.
Mr. Mayo?
I was gonna say, the school department was represented at the meetings that we had on this, and they did agree to reach out to their parents and let them know about this, for what it will be worth, as Ann has already stated.
Inexperienced.
Inexperienced. There's also more parking at that school now,
Right.
so.
So we have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Any
Yep.
further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Next one, Lieutenant, please.
Item number 4, we received a complaint of northbound traffic on Main Street backing up at the intersection with Forest Street when the train gates are down at the Forest Street crossing. This is caused from vehicles waiting to make a left turn from Main Street onto Forest Street. Traffic that wishes to continue northbound on Main Street is unable to pass the left-turning vehicles due to 4 parking spaces on the east side of Main Street between the entrance to the condo building at number 894 and the Hallmark Health Building. The backup at the Main Street, Forest Street intersection affects the Main Street, Oak Street intersection during times of heavy traffic. We looked at this area, and to eliminate this problem, the TAC is recommending the removal of the 4 parking spaces between the driveway to 894 Main Street and the Hallmark Health Building.
So possible vote to approve the request for the removal of the 4 parking spaces between the driveway 894 Main Street and the Hallmark Health Building.
So moved. Definitely.
Second.
Second. Discussion? Ed?
I have 2 issues with this. I happen to have run by on Friday night after getting the notice on this as well, just to take a look. I think one is, we're already at running a pretty significant parking deficit in Greenwood, and if you look at where these spaces are, they're very close to a number of businesses. They're right across the street from a number of businesses. So I'm concerned about the impact it would have on those businesses. I think at a time when we're scrambling to try to find ways that we can accommodate parking for businesses in Greenwood, the last thing we want to do is eliminate 4 spots. The other concern that I have is there's a somewhat similar situation at the corner of Chestnut and North Ave, right by Gem Auto Parts in the corner. And you'll see that when there are people waiting, when those train gates are down, people will fly around the person who's waiting to take the left, and they're going often at excessive speed. It's very dangerous taking the left if you're taking a left onto Chestnut because there's a car flying around. It's also dangerous for the pedestrians that are in the crosswalk, usually the commuters, and I've seen it firsthand. It happens to be in my street, so it's a good case study that I've observed for years now. And I actually think it incentivizes people to speed past the cars that are waiting, and it creates a very dangerous environment there. So I think for those two reasons, I'm opposed to these changes, and I would encourage you to give that similar thought.
Yeah.
So, I parked for years right here and would walk by that and see the backup. I'm in favor of this. I was there every day, and I don't think those spots are used by people using the businesses. That's my at all. I also think if the lanes are marked clearly, so I don't know if you'd be doing that, so that's, there's 2 lanes left only and straight.
We would certainly do that.
I think it would ease traffic very much so, even for the businesses. But it does, this now creates what I see as sometimes dangerous jockeying of people trying to get around that car that's taking a left. But, and I absolutely appreciate what you're saying, Ed, about the businesses. For years, I don't think I ever saw people using those spots for business parking.
So
I'm in
I
favor of
live
it.
right there.
Yeah.
Those spots are taken over by one business employees who's across the street. So it's.
Oh, the Benton?
Yep, they're there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're gone by 2 p.m., which is the worst traffic time.
Yeah.
It's not Melrose Wakefield Healthcare using spots.
Right.
It's not anyone going to Honeydew at the further businesses. It's 6 a.m. and it's trucks a lot of time actually that should not be parking on the street anyway because they're business trucks.
Ed?
I still think that's a different consideration. I mean, if it's someone that's parking there all day when they shouldn't be, then we put 2-hour signs. I mean, there are other remedies, to address that. But it's not, as you point out, it's basically across the street from Honeydew. It is a spot.
It's not across the street. It's a full.
No, it's way down.
Well,
Way down.
It's a full block.
Yeah,
No,
it's by the tracks.
But I mean,
way
but
down.
that's not that. I mean, it's all
You're right.
relative,
Oh,
but it's
no,
not very
I-
far. I mean, it's like, what is it, like half a
No.
block? I mean, it's not very far.
No, you're right. It's
Yeah,
just,
I mean, it's less than a block, I'll say.
right.
So, I mean, by most parking standards, less than a block away is not a very far distance. I mean, this is some of the only like parking that we really have there, aside from, right down by like, once you get down by Tequila's, we have very limited spots there. On a Friday night, you see people that are parking in all these spaces and they're walking. I mean, I think there's consideration given to the business, and I'm concerned again about the idea of cars flying by, because we've seen that happen on North Avenue. Like, for years it's happened.
Paul?
Mr. Chair, through you. Again, in this instance, I'm definitely going to go along with Ed because of my constituents down in Greenwood, the businesses that have been complaining now for at least 4 years that I know of. If I voted for this right now or in favor of this, I'd be getting phone calls all night long because they're complaining now that there's no parking available to them. And we're telling them, park your cars further up. So if they're going to eliminate the spots that we're telling them to go park in, okay, to make it no more parking space, how's that promoting their businesses if they can't have a place to park? If, in the case that there's someone in a parking space all day long, that's an enforcement issue. Tag the son of the guns, okay? And once you tag them, if they're not going, if they want to keep paying the ticket, all well and good. But if they're there all day long, if that's the argument I'm hearing, that they're there all day long, tag them. They won't be there all day long the next day, or the next day. Enforce that issue then. I don't agree in removing 4 spots in the Greenwood area, strictly on the fact that the businesses don't want more spots removed. They're looking for spaces to park. And we haven't addressed that issue now in 10 years. So let's address the issues a different way instead of removing spots first. So I'm against it.
So now I will just follow up that is one of the concerns.
We had Julie.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, MEHREEN.
That is one of the issues. The others is when you leave for work and the commuter rail, because it is a commuter rail stop and there is an intersection there, taking that left turn backs up. And as the Traffic Advisory Committee said, it is now backing up all the way to Oak and Main. And so if you actually, like I do, like Julie does, like Tony does,
Yeah.
we live down there.
Okay.
It will take me up to, not joking, 3 to 4 minutes to merge in the morning because of that turn. So that
And-
it is not just the parking spaces, and this complaint was actually, this issue was actually raised by residents, and so I'm gonna defer to our residents who, including me, who live right there in those 4 parking spaces. I will tell you, people are not parking there and walking over to the Greenwood businesses.
And through you, it's a matter of who you're going to represent.
Yeah.
Are you representing individuals or are you representing community? I'll represent the community every day of the week.
I
However,
think you're representing,
I'm just telling you.
I just
my-
want to say, I want to ask how residents are not part of the community.
No.
What-
You can't have it just one or the other. So she said she'll take the residents over the businesses. I said you can't do that. You have to take in consideration both.
I would just like to say, I live in Greenwood, and I have heard from multiple people that the time it takes to get through that intersection has gotten much worse since the Hallmark was built, and those, those spots have become available. Because we had construction, I think everybody thought it was going to be over after construction, and it's remained to be quite difficult. So I will be voting for the removal of these spaces.
Still,
I also think the traffic prevents people from stopping at the businesses, because if I'm sitting at that light, I'm just gonna keep going. So, you could look at it both ways. My vote will be in support of moving people into businesses and the individual residents.
we have a motion on the floor. Ed?
I don't think it's an either or. If we're identifying that there are concerns for businesses and concerns for residents, then I think we have to figure out a better solution. And I don't think that removing parking spaces is that solution, but that's not to say that we can't figure out a better one. I think we send it back to the drawing board. VHB is very qualified, they're very creative. They can look at other ways perhaps to try to address this traffic mitigation. I don't think it's a, it's a yes or no and that's it. I mean, let's look at it further. I appreciate what you're saying about the concerns of residents. If you're having 3 to 4 minutes of traffic that wasn't there before, then that's unfortunate, and you shouldn't have that. So let's fix it. But I don't think fixing it is, we're addressing one problem, but then creating another. And I don't think that's the way that we end up resolving this issue amicably for everybody. So let's send it back and have it looked at further.
Still have a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? So the vote is to approve the request for the removal of 4 parking spaces at the driveway of 894 Main Street and Hallmark Health Building. All those in favor of removing the spots? All those opposed?
3 to 3.
3 on 3. The motion does not carry.
We will take that back to the drawing board at the TAC, and I will also add Chestnut and North Ave to that, to see if there's any improvements we can make there. Topic number 5, the final one. There was a request from a resident of Montclair Ave for a stop sign on Castle Clare Circle, where it intersects with Montclair Ave. A resident reports that most cars exiting Castle Clare Circle do not stop or yield the right-of-way to traffic on Montclair Ave. This is a T-type intersection that currently has no traffic control signs. As a result, the TAC is recommending that because this is a T-type intersection, where Montclair Ave has the right-of-way, that a stop sign be installed on Castle Clare Circle.
So the vote is to approve the request for a stop sign installed on Castle Clare Circle.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the request for a stop sign installed on Castle Clare Circle?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for your time, Lieutenant Scurry.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Smith. So we have a possible vote to transfer $1 million to the debt service capital needs account. This has already been approved by the legislature and is a very routine vote.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. I already had the Wakefield Linfield Chamber of Commerce.
We call it the Greater Wakefield, by the way.
Greater way.
Regular town meeting, the vote to schedule the regular town meeting for November 5th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the Galvin Middle School.
So moved.
Need a
Second.
Discussion?
I understand why we're doing it that date. I just want to point out it's the day before the national primaries, national election. And so it is will be a busy day.
Some of us, we spend a lot of time at the Galvin Middle School those 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can I expand on that? Because I know Maria
Yeah,
and I did
I'd
talk
appreciate
about
it.
it. It's a, November is sometimes a tough month to have town meeting in because you have an election, you normally have an election, you have Veterans Day, and you have Thanksgiving, and how it falls, and sometimes it's a perfect storm, it's hard to fit those Mondays and Thursdays in per what it's stated in the charter. So I understand that. It will be a busy time. I get that. There are some things that need to happen at that town meeting so we can close out the year. We can, we usually utilize free cash to set the tax rate so we can send out the tax bills, and a lot of that does. And we're gonna have some charter items on the agenda, I think, at that town meeting. So when you run the referendum period and everything, it's tough to get all that done. And if we push up after Thanksgiving, what happens is people go away, they're busy. So it's not perfect, and I apologize. This was just a very strange year.
Can we not have the second day on the 6th, though?
Oh.
The second, that's Election Day on the 6th.
So that's right, because we're at the Galvin now.
We're at the
so
Galvin,
We
yeah.
wouldn't have it anyways.
Yeah.
Good.
So will the town clerk be able to set up on the 5th going into the
The
6th?
town meeting is pretty easy. It's 4 tables and books.
No,
I don't
I
have a
meant getting
problem.
ready for election.
They'll be ready. We have our DPW guys will set that up for
Start
us.
Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. That I'm not worried about. She won't be happy if she's watching at home, but it's a busy time. But that's why that's my suggestion.
I have a motion, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Possible vote for town meeting warrant for the regular town meeting.
Well, since we scheduled the day, we can open the warrant and allow people the opportunity to put citizen petitions in as
Thank
well.
you.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Cool. Possible vote to close town meeting warrant on October 4th, 2018 at 4:30 PM for the regular town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Licenses. Possible vote, common victual license. Possible vote for the new 2018 common victual license for the Omelet headquarters at 57 Water Street from September 11, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. So we have a new owner who is going to make no changes to the Omelet House and keep things as is. Just to give you the background on that.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Class 2 license. Possible vote to renew the 2018 Class 2 license for the Wakefield Gas at 454 Water Street from September 10th, 2018 through December 31st, 2018, pending fingerprints results in the police chief recommendation.
Second discussion, is that standard fingerprints on
Yes.
Class
No.
2?
Yep.
And why is it the short period of time again?
He does not have one now and wants it, and they're
Oh, he's
issued
seeking
annually.
one.
So he's seeking one.
He's seeking
Yeah.
one, okay, thank you.
Julie?
Two questions. So the last meeting, we talked about Class 2 licenses changing, so would this just be up until that point?
Yes, this is up to the end of the year, and this was explained, but he wanted it anyway.
Okay.
So,
And I guess I get a little nervous approving things pending fingerprints and background check given
yeah.
recent.
And it's not renew, right? So that word is wrong. It shouldn't be renew since it's a new application.
Well, he had one in the past.
Sherry?
It's renew, yeah.
It is renew?
Yeah.
He just didn't do it earlier in the year.
Right, he's
Okay.
always had one, he just didn't do it.
Renew it.
Yeah.
Ed, did you have a comment?
Have there been issues in the past with fingerprints or background checks?
Not on this location. No, I'm
So
sorry.
he's been through this process?
He's been through this before. He
Right.
just did not do it at the end of the year last year when he
Okay,
should have.
so we're not expecting any?
We're not expecting
He's
any.
been a very solid.
I think it would just be subject to, and obviously I would just perhaps it's an amendment, that if there's anything that is of any concern to you, Steve, which it doesn't sound like there would
Yep.
be, but if there was, you'd bring it back to.
Absolutely,
To
yeah.
us,
Yeah.
and then we'd
Yep.
consider it then.
Yeah, pending, I.
Pending, yep,
seems to
pending.
Suggest that.
Yep.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. One-day liquor license. Possible vote for one-day liquor license for Wakefield Main Street's annual meeting on September 25th, 2018, at 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. at Brothers Restaurant.
So moved.
Second, I'll make a motion that we waive the fee. Add it to it.
Question why we would waive the fee, I guess, next one.
It's typical that we do on town bodies.
But Main Street's not a town body, aren't they a 501c3?
Yes.
They're not a town body, they're an independent nonprofit organization. I think that
Okay.
we do not waive the fee. And my question was, I think a couple of meetings ago, we actually asked for, I understand it was in our agenda, so we know what the purpose of this is, but I think it should be on the application, what the purpose of a one-day license is.
We have an updated,
Yep.
yes?
Yes, they just got this in, so yes, it's their annual meeting, so.
Yeah, I understand that, we have it on the agenda, so I do
Yes.
understand it, but I just think
Yes, it's prior to
going
making a
forward,
change.
we had asked for it to be included.
Brothers Restaurant does not serve alcohol right now. In order for them to have alcohol on the premises, they need a one-day liquor license to.
I'm
Understood.
completely fine with that.
Right.
We have a motion, Ed?
I guess the only thing, looking at the application itself, I don't think it actually asks for a purpose, but I think it should.
Exactly, that's
Yeah.
my
Right,
point.
that's what
That's
Julie
my
said.
point.
Yeah.
We've
We
discussed
asked for it to be added
making
at
those
some point.
changes.
Yeah,
We
so
are
going
moving forward
forward.
with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. Licensing fees. Possible discussion and vote to review and amend the current licensing fees for liquor licenses, common victualler licenses, entertainment licenses, auto amusement licenses, Class 1 and Class 2 licenses, library licenses, and fortune teller licenses. That's a mouthful.
It's just a review. So moved.
Well, I think we want a discussion to see.
Yeah. Also waiting for a second.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sandy.
Yeah.
So what happened was, we occasionally, should say often, we get involved in comparisons or, see what the market is bearing out there, whether it's licenses or salaries or what have you. And so we recently were involved in one, and we noticed that, and we felt for a while that in some of our restaurant all alcohol licenses and some of the other licenses, maybe we're a little bit low. And maybe we should be looking at next fiscal year, looking to increase some of the licenses fees. So thought we'd bring this forward from discussion. A couple areas that stuck out to me, that you have some communities that are near us that for a restaurant license are charging $5,000 a year, $4,500. We're at $3,000. That hasn't changed in how long? 10 years or more?
So much longer.
So much longer.
I would say 25
Wow.
at
Yeah,
least.
hasn't changed. We don't have any restaurant beer and wine licenses. We're at 2,400. That might not be so, that might be pretty much in compare with others. Club alcohol, I hate to say it to the clubs, but we seem to be quite on the low side there. Package store all alcohol, we seem to be pretty much in the norm there. We do not have any package store, just beer and wine areas. One-day alcohol, I believe by statute, the highest we can go is to 100 for a one-day.
Yeah.
And so we may want to, if that's what we are in most cases, we may want to look at that as well. One-day wine and malt, we charge the same. And some of the other licenses, there are licenses that we are at the statutory top of. I don't believe that's not entertainment. Entertainment is, we charge 50. A lot of people are charging more, 100 for some of those. Common vic, we charge $25. That's pretty low.
That's low.
Standard with some of the others. Our entertainment licenses are 50. You can see some of them at 100. Auto amusement, at 100. Think class 1 and 2, that is a statutory one, if I'm not mistaken, Tom. It's almost right at 100. Livery, I don't know if we have any livery right now. We have
Right
one?
now, we do.
We
no,
do not.
We do not,
We
no.
do not
Right
have
now,
any
we do
livery.
not.
We had one a few years ago.
Nobody has renewed for 18. yes.
Fortune tellers, they should really figure out what we're charging anyway, and
We
just
put
bring
it
in
to
the
the
credit
fortune
sheet.
tellers.
Yeah.
They know it's coming.
The other, mobile food trucks, we really don't have any right now, but that's something we should consider for the future.
So that wouldn't be considered ice cream truck?
Most of those do not get licensed by us.
Okay.
Most of them get a state license. So, one thing that we would like to institute also is we have a no application fee. So what happens is someone comes in for a license and a lot of work is done, we might get the Board of Health involved, fingerprinting, although they pay for that, but there's other disciplines that are looking at it, and there's no fee at all to cover the time, of course Sherry's time there. So my suggestion is be that we do charge an application fee, which can be handled by this board itself. Not that it's very onerous, but I think licenses should mean something in Wakefield, and I think we're giving a very good product. We're an outstanding community. People want to come here and be here. This is not going to prohibit anybody from coming here, and I think a license should mean something. I had one of the license owners tell me years ago that he is very happy with what we put our liquor licensees through, because that makes his license more valuable, that you have to do something in Wakefield, which I thought was great. So I put this out for discussion. I certainly would like to see us, not that this is gonna make us rich, but it does add into the whole area when we try to, put the best foot forward and try to get, the better businesses that we can. So I think I would suggest going on the all alcohol license, going from 3 to 4,500. You certainly don't have to do that. Restaurants for beer and wine, we're at 2,400. I would suggest going to 3,000 on that. Club all alcohol, sorry to the clubs, but I think I would double that to $1,000 for those licenses. Probably I'll get a lot of phone calls on that tomorrow, Paul. And I think on the package stores,
Good.
I think we're pretty good on that, I guess. And one day, we're already at 100 on those.
Yeah, that's not fixed by statute. Actually, you can do what you like about that.
On the one day?
Yep, special license.
Okay. I guess I'm hearing keep it at 100. And on the entertainment licenses, I think those should be for the one-day entertainment, the common vitular, and the, one-day entertainment in general, and common vitular. I think those all should be 100, personally. And I would maybe, I wouldn't touch a livery, it doesn't matter. Fortune teller, I'm not too concerned with. So that would be my recommendation. Maybe this is something you want to talk about and think about for another meeting, but just wanted to put this at least out there. And this body can do that. We do not need to go to town meeting.
Okay. So is this coming to a vote, Steve, or just?
Whatever you guys want to do. Possible discussion and vote.
It's just gonna be my suggestion that we come back, with some feedback from Steve and review these fees later, but then not take the vote. So Julie, I think you were first.
I was just going to ask, we just voted on a one-day license that was 50, and this says 100. I'm just trying to figure out where the inconsistency is.
Yeah, I did notice that. Do you know why?
Where was it?
That was the one for Main Streets.
And I'm not saying we should go back and change that.
Maybe they got in under the wire, but it was.
I'll just point it out. I don't need an
We've
answer
always
on it.
charged 50. That's
That's what I recall as well, so,
Oh, so maybe we're charging 50, maybe we want to go to 100 on that. Okay.
Okay, that's
Okay.
something just for clarification. And I just think I am in full agreement with an application fee, a modest application fee, except for ones where it significantly increases the percentage, like a one-day fee like that, so,
or charitable.
yeah.
Maureen, I think you were next.
Yeah, I do. I don't want to vote on this. I'd like to think about it and digest this. I also, it would be really helpful to get 2017 and 2018 numbers to know how many in each of these categories. So how many one days did we have? How many? It's interesting to know that we have no livery, So I just, if we could get the 2017, 2018 numbers up to now, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we used to have a livery, but he stopped. Why would you anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, with
Yep.
We did
Uber
No, I
and
get
Lyft and
it.
what have you.
But I'm just curious about how many one day we
Yep.
have and how many club alcohol, how many of those
Yep.
do we have?
I can let you know that. Yep.
Paul?
When we initially started talking about licensing and fees throughout the town, we included the use of the common too. Aren't we going to touch base on that at some point?
That'll be a separate, yes, we are.
Okay, because that was a
Tony,
big,
as liaison on that, has been working on that.
that was a big point of discussion at one time, so. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was going to be included.
That's coming up too.
Anyone else, discussion?
So, good.
Close
We'll bring
that?
something back to you, yeah.
Yep, we'll come back to that. Warrant review and signing warrants number 55 dated June 29, 2018. Warrant number 3 dated July 17, 2018. Warrant number 4 dated July 24, 2018. And warrant number 5 dated July 31st, 2018 regarding town affairs were reviewed and signed. Julie, do you care to touch on that?
No, I do not. What is in there?
Not the good.
They were so long ago.
Not the right answer?
Sorry, no, they were
know.
all in order and.
I know, thank you. Thank you, I know what kind of work you put in for that. So matters not anticipated by the chairperson within 48 hours of the meeting. And we'll just start, Sherry,
Oh, I'm all set.
okay?
Yeah.
Maureen?
Sure, so, no, that's fine, I didn't write fast enough. A couple of updates. One, we did have our elections last week. We had 22% voter turnout. The Council on Aging offered rides. One person actually did take up on the rides. Just a reminder, the rides are available for anyone in town. You do not have to be a member of the Council of Aging. I only heard good things about election and the ease of having it at the Galvin Middle School this year. Had some ideas about new signage that we can do going forward in November. And there was one concern about how far sign holders were, and I went and measured it just now. They were over 174 feet from the door. So just want to clarify that there wasn't a problem with that. So the election. The other thing, and Steve might be talking about this, but I attended 2 of the Complete Streets meetings, which were really great meetings, and hopefully our application got in for September 1st. So we will wait to hear. I saw last week Medford, round 2, some other towns around us got some money, so hopefully we'll get some money on that. And all the information is up on our website, the proposal as well. Steve?
I have not seen the latest proposal, but if it's not, we'll make sure it is.
We will get it up there as soon as possible. Yeah, those are my 2 updates.
Paul?
Just a couple of things to bring to make sure that everyone, we initially authorized a pilot program for the A-frames. The year went by, and then this group decided that we all thought it was a great idea and to potentially make it permanent. So a group has started to put together draft rules and regulations that will cover that permanency. We are conducting an A-frame discussion that's scheduled tomorrow morning with them, to have the merchants come in and give their 2 cents on what we'll be presenting in order for us to gather enough information and put together the packet and present it to this group at one of our upcoming meetings. So that meeting will be held at 8 a.m. In the town hall in the first floor conference room. And we hope that as many merchants as possible can attend and we can gather some info from them. To touch on to parking, there will be another discussion scheduled for us to touch on parking throughout the town, and that we initially set for Thursday the 20th at 7 p.m. in the Heritage Room at the Civic Center. That too will be something that we will put together components from various committees that have been put together over the last year, bring those issues into it, and also address some potential concerns with the downtown and other areas of town that have been brought to light within the same period of time. And that meeting will, again, take in consideration of all those who participate into that meeting to come back with a proposal for this board for action. So those are the 2 meetings that will be scheduled. A question to Mr. Mayo. We had talked on this at one of our gatherings. Wakefield elder exemption. Do you have any an update that you can potentially give us for that?
Yes, I did meet with Victor, our Director of Assessments, couple of things happened with this. A, the legislature was in session trying to scramble, get their budget done, and weren't interested in this after town meeting, potentially, or at that point in time. The legislature actually put in their own bill for the exemptions. That didn't really go anywhere. So in talking to our state legislatures, they're ready to come back with our thing, so we'll be meeting with them and getting it back
Appreciate
in
that.
front of them, because we need to have them approve it. It's a home rule petition.
So, and my last question is, I had the opportunity to go to the Reading Town Fair, and I bumped into one of their representatives. They are now select persons, I believe. I'm not even sure what their title is, but he had asked me if there was any movement on the National Guard site. Do we have any information on that?
The
going
only
forward?
information that I have is that the National Guard isn't thrilled. In fact,
okay.
isn't thrilled at all. They don't have the final say, and when we met with our managers the other day, we were again trying to get our state delegation and the Reading state delegation to get us a hearing with maybe someone at the department, at the state level, to help us out.
Very good.
that.
And I just
But
want to wish everyone
that's
a happy Rosh Hashanah, and that will be it. Thank you.
Attorney Mullen?
Nothing, thanks.
Steve?
No, Maureen did mention the complete streets. Other than that, I'm ready.
Good. Julie?
I also wanted to wish our neighbors happy Rosh Hashanah and a sweet and happy New Year. I think we should think about going forward, whether we have meetings like this on big holidays like that, just in terms of optimizing participation, but that's something for another time. I did participate in the Wakefield Cultural Council meeting last week, which was very interesting. They have been awarded $8,000 from the Massachusetts Cultural Council for activities that enhance culture. So that's everything from the arts and music to humanities and civic education. So that deadline is October 15th for grants. So I encourage anybody who is interested in that type of work to look into that. Wanted to mention that we're doing a town read. The Human Rights Commission is doing a town read on The Hate You Give. It's an excellent, excellent book that talks about a high school senior who is kind of torn between two worlds, kind of a suburban white world and an urban diverse world, and I highly encourage it. It's an easy read, and on October 11th, there'll be a whole group getting together to discuss it. I believe HRC is going to be at our meeting next week, or in the next 2 weeks, and will tell us more about that. And then finally, I have to do my environmental plug. It's National Drive Electric Week, and even our distinguished administrator recently bought a hybrid. So on Thursday at the Light Department, they will be having an electric car demonstration, and there's actually some very good incentives to buy either a Nissan Leaf or a Chevy Bolt. So anybody who's interested in electric cars, this is the week to go out and look at them. Thank you.
Ed?
Thank you. First, happy Rosh Hashanah to neighbors and friends celebrating today. I had the opportunity to do a walkthrough of the Walton School. This is a big day for the Walton School in that it's the first day of school in what feels like a brand new building. And our town administrator, Mr. Mayo, often says, we got a new building for $6 million. And it is a very impressive facility. There's no question about that. They were feverishly working over the weekend to add the finishing touches, and it looks great. And I do want to also recognize Steve Mayo, who was an integral part of that process, especially at the end. There was, before the certificate of occupancy issued, only town employees could be in there. And so Steve was hustling to help everyone he could, including all the teachers, in terms of getting their classrooms ready and moving things around. He even sustained an injury as a result.
But be out for a month.
But he's still here tonight nonetheless. But it's an exciting time for the West Side. We have a lot more work to do in a lot of other schools, certainly, but that was a great example of what we can do when we just employ best practices. And so I'm excited about that. And again, I can't thank Steve enough for all that he did to help to move that along. That's all I have.
Briefly, also happy Rosh Hashanah to all our friends. And I think not too many years ago, there was talk about closing the Walton. Those of us who sent our children there and live in that neighborhood, extended neighborhood, know the importance, as all our schools do, of having neighborhood schools, so I'm thrilled that the Walton got a fresh look. I've been traveling a lot and haven't seen it. I can't wait to see it. I won't be parking on Davidson Road, though. I'll walk down. But thrilled that the kids have a new school. That's it.
Having taken a tour of the Walton, I was amazed the technology we got for $6 million, and thank the Permanent Building Committee and everybody else involved for putting together another successful school building / renovation project in Wakefield. Happy Rosh Hashanah to all our viewers at home. And lastly, that tomorrow is September 11th. Please take a moment and just kind of reflect what happened 17 years ago. And that's it. Thank you all. Have a good night, Wakefield, and I look forward to seeing you back, Peter, next time.
I move that we end the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.